Marcus Santos, one of my favorite people. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to welcome you on board on this in this discussion. And let's talk. Let's talk about you came to COSA a number. Well, we've been on COSA faculty for a number of years, and it's and you bring on bring to us the whole Brazilian percussion from your point of view. Tell me a little bit about where you came from first of all, and that whole trajectory, and what brought you to America and stuff.
Sounds good. But I'd love to first say how grateful I am for being here. Thank you for the invitation, Aldito. You are one of my favorite people, and there's so much looking back at the many years that we've known each other, and so many good memories, and basically, I've got to meet wonderful people too, and it's all due for you to opening your the COSA doors and welcoming into the family. So thank you. It's great to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. Now I'm stuck. No, thank you, Marcus. I mean, that's the whole idea that what we had with COSA is not only an educational thing for participants to come from all over the world and study with the top guys in all the fields and have a kind of a total percussion, a 360 learning experience, but also very close with the very people who sometimes even invented the rhythms or have been at top of their game. And also the faculty, which is another thing that people forget. Faculty would be there working and meeting each other, and we're all at the end of the day, students. And now you made me think of. I remember clearly, and this was a funny story when Ed Shaughnessy, when Ed Shaughnessy was there, and one participant came up to me, and he says, "Aldo, I am like in seventh heaven here. I'm in a class with Ed Shaughnessy, learning his brushes stuff, his whole big band thing, and I'm in total awe, and I had a great experience." And of course, there are 5 classes a day on all levels. We set it up. You remember how we work.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, when I left the class, I was going to class with Glenn Velez to study some frame drums in his class on my level, because we have different levels. He said, but the funny thing is, I'm sitting in class, and who's sitting beside me is Ed Shaughnessy in the class as a student. So he's learning things, and then this particular participant was advanced in frame drumming and less advanced in the drumming. So he says, I'm sitting there and guiding Ed Shaughnessy on the sounds and the techniques that Glenn was talking about. So I'm helping him in this. He said, this was an amazing experience. I said, but that's what it's about. We're all students forever. And it's a wave, and I think that was a great learning experience, even for him. And somebody as great as Ed Shaughnessy, you're always learning, and this is a perfect situation where something you hadn't had a chance to work at. Here it is.
Yeah.
You never did taiko before or vibraphone. Well, Mike Manieri is there. Let him show you answer some questions that you have or give you some guidance. It's amazing. Now tell me about but thank you for that. I appreciate it. And it was really the design, because it has been my experience all my life, and I thought this is the way it should be. And so it worked fabulously. We had incredible people from participants, faculty.
Yes. Another great thing also it's the connection that we're not only sitting next to the folks that have inspired us, right? During the COSA camps, we have a chance to hang out and get to really meet them as people, just like everyone is. Sometimes we see Newport, right? Or
Newport, yes.
And then Aldito, I remember the first time I walked into COSA. So when I was, every time I would go on the road, I would like to watch these videos produced by Vic Firth, by their educational department. And then there was this guy, I've never paid attention to the name. I don't know why. I just love these videos. And the first workshop I ever saw at Costa, as I walk in and I'm like nervous, scared, and I'm looking around, and then the first workshop is the guy that I always watch the video, and his name is Bill Bachman. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And we got to hang later, and we went to the same college. He was saying the stories like, oh man, when I was there, I used to take, I don't know if he's gonna allow us to say this story. Hopefully he doesn't mind. He would just take off the removable roof of his dorm room, and just because, so we got to share this silly stuff, and not only admired him and as a drummer, but also and see like the goofy side of him and the funny, and so I feel like the loving aspect of the Costa camp let us, go beyond learning from each other, as you mentioned, but also making this connections and become friends and have a long-term relationship. Every time I see him, every time I see you, we're cracking up jokes, remembering stories. So that's great.
Well, that's a whole part of the learning trajectory. I mean, we're human beings. We love what we do, right? And then meeting people who guide us and bring us to another place, or someone introduces us to someone. I mean, to me that's fantastic. And things like you're mentioning Neil Peart. You remember, I mean, Neil and I were friends for many, many years. We had many projects that we had been working on and talking about for many, many years. And, for one thing or another, for one reason or another, things didn't work out. And usually he had things in his life that were happening that things had to be like put on the shelf for a while. And it was like that. But at one point I reached out to him and I said, you should come, and I won't mention who's coming, because we always had a special guest, you remember, and surprise everybody.
Yeah, that was great. The build-up for that special guest was always awesome, right? Sorry, not meaning to interrupt, but before, so also the camp would start on a Tuesday, I believe, right?
Monday night.
Monday, and then the guest would come on Sunday. Right?
The last Sunday morning, yes. Yeah.
So that whole week would be Aldo. Who's the guest this year? Who's the guest this year? And then everybody would throw names, right? Dennis Chambers. Is it Steve Gadd? Oh, Dave Wackhall. Neil Peart. And
yeah.
It was always a fun game. It would be like, oh, maybe. Oh, that's a good name.
But it's funny because with Neil, I promised him, I gave him my word I wouldn't say anything, and it was funny because, for years I'd be throwing it back and forth, and then he wrote me this one time, and it was just a few weeks before Cosa. He says, Aldo, your timing is perfect. My family's coming up, but I've got 2 weeks before they come up, and I'm up here. And because he had a house near Montreal, he says, I'll just drive down. And so I said, we had to set up, under a fake name at the hotel and all of that business. And then at first I thought we were just going to talk, because he was such a brilliant person. And every time we would get into conversations, it would last 5 hours, and he was such an interesting person. And also, having done what he had done, it was never about what he did. It was the thought process, and I thought that was important, and to share it with other people. I mean, not only ourselves. I said, imagine you would be an inspiration to all of these people. So it was the first time he ever agreed to do something. So he said, let's do it. I'll just come down and we'll do that. So I thought we were just going to speak. And then a few days before, he writes me, he says, no, Aldo, let's play. And then I thought to myself, I said, that would be great. But now I got to tell the tech team. And if I tell the tech team, then everybody will know, So I said, how am I gonna keep it from the tech team, have them set up that stuff, and then I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll throw them off. I'll do something that they would never know who it would be, because we'll do like a kind of an African thing. Remember? So I said, I'll put together a team. So you guys, we rehearsed kind of, some rhythms, a couple of things. I said, we'll probably be doing this. So I was like putting it together. And so I told Neil, come really early, like an hour before, so that we can talk about, what you'd like to do, and we'll wing it. We'll speak and then we'll play, but it's all set up. And I don't know which way it's going to go. And that was the big challenge then, because I had to keep it from everybody until the morning of. Yep. And then, of course, they never forgave me.
But can you imagine, like, how if somehow the word got out? You were always good about that, though. You always kept us like guessing. It was a great fun game, Like, but can you imagine if the word got out and the Kosa is about drumming, right? It's drumming related, folks. But if the word got out, it would be like the town would come in.
That's right. So, and I said, I can't take that responsibility. Plus, I promised. So promise is a promise. But I said, this is going to be, so much fun. And he was such a great sport. Right away, we kind of talked it through. We came on. When you guys came on, we played. We talked and talked and talked, and then finally he says, "Well, let's play." I had it set it up so that he could play djembe. Remember, I showed him a couple of things beforehand, what he would do, and I said, and then he said, "Well, maybe you go out the drum set, and then I'll come on the drum set." I said, "Let's play it by ear. Let's see where this goes. We'll feel it." So that's what we did. We totally improvised that whole thing. And the thing that's funny is that as musicians, that persona that we have built over our careers is somebody else. What we do, we're still at this one level, and I think that really came through. With someone of that stature. And I'm really happy about that, because that's the important message. Of course, we're all going to be learning for life as long as we live, and as long as we love what we do, and we certainly do. And it was funny because afterwards, I forget, there was one participant. He was 7'2", a really big guy, and like he was crying so much, and he picks me up and gives me this big hug. And I said, please don't hurt me. So I was being funny, because I totally got it. Everybody was in such an emotional state. They couldn't believe being in the room for this long in that kind of environment. And it's not about who you are. It was about what we do and sharing it. And it was really amazing. And Neil himself was he so enjoyed it. When he got home, he says, I had a smile. It took him like it was a 3-hour ride. He says, my smile stayed on my face for the whole ride home. So I couldn't believe how much fun I had. So he says, I can't thank you enough, although it was amazing. He says, let's do it again.
Awesome. Yeah. That was a super special day. It's like my drive home too. It was a smile year to year too. It was like, what just happened? So we just met New Beard and drummed with him. And another great thing too that was very inspirational about that particular visit is because he was known for writing every single note for his drum solos, and always played the same way, right?
Right.
And to see how spontaneous he was, and how much he was into improvising and feeling the vibe and going with the flow too. That was very, very inspirational as well. And the fact that he was open to do some West African rhythms.
Oh, yeah. No, he said, challenge me. The thing was that I knew about him was I mean, he had seen me perform with Repercussion, and we had this project to do an album, actually, Repercussion with Neil Peart. And I said, this would be amazing. These four percussionists from contemporary music to classical to jazz, and we do all of that, and then bring in Neil Peart in this, and I told him, I said, you are the perfect person for this because you are like, you have the mindset of a classical percussionist. You have everything so orchestrated in your mind. And so it has to be perfect, from your words, but also the drumming, everything is so calculated right to the T. He says that, and he said, he was always frustrated with that because he says, yes, that's true, but I have a difficulty improvising because I'm that way. It has to be. So that's what he was working on. So finally, with his studying, it got him out of that shell that he was really happy about, studying with these different people, Peter Erskine and a few others in Los Angeles. He was really happy to finally get out of that box that he had boxed himself in. He was so good at it, though. He was perfect. But I said, you are like the classical percussionist in this rock band. And the thing is that, the band had this mindset that they wanted to be the smallest symphony orchestra on the planet. That was their whole kind of concept, right?
Interesting.
So when he saw Repercussion, and we were talking about doing the album, I said, this is perfect because now we can do all of that. And so, I mean, of course, we didn't end up doing it because at that moment he had lost his wife and his daughter, and it was a personal tragedy that he went through. But when he came back, now he was in a different state where he was really ready to open and experiment and improvise, which was a big thing for him. And he was jealous of people who could just out of the blue, like, Buddy Rich, just improvise, whatever. And he always, he would throw things at me. He says, you make me sick. You can do all of these things. He says, I make you sick. You're sick. But he was, he was great that way. But I mean, the important thing is that, he showed the aspiration that one has and the work ethic that you have to do it. Because, I mean, obviously that's a lot of work. And to take anything to that level and take what you do seriously. I'd say I don't take myself seriously. I don't think anybody should take themselves seriously. It's what we do we should take seriously. Because at the end of the day, we're just kids. We're just, our minds are what you were at 15, you're still kind of there, like it or not. You've developed in many ways, but you're still that kid who needs, who loves things, who gets excited about things, but you've developed some things and, through all the hard work, right? I mean, just like you. I mean, you grew up in Brazil, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sounds good. Well, so in Brazil, it's like most of the education is basically in the streets. You go to see bands, you share with friends, and improvisation is part of it. And what is really hard coming from that background is how can I play the same thing note per note again in a solo context? So I see the other way. So it's interesting to hear like how Neil Peart it was saying like, okay, no, this is it's not in my toolbox to be in that improv scenario, right? Considering he's a monster, he was a monster, and the solos that he played were out of this world. Right. So to hear that, it's very inspirational to see that. Okay, so there is this other side too. Like and the other inspirational aspect I think too is the fact that he wasn't afraid of getting in front of people and everything is being recorded, right? And do something that wasn't his cup of tea, as they say. So it's quite interesting to understand this contrast, because growing up in Brazil and music is improvised. We go with the flow. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
And so one would think like, okay, what, so you can improvise anytime you want since you built these wonderful solos your entire career. So it's quite interesting to hear that story.
No, and it's amazing because when I first met him, it was backstage. I was working with a guy called Aldo Nova. At the time, we were also doing some work with Celine Dion, and at one point he said, "Let's Rush is in town. Let's go see the show." And this was, so we went, and then we're in the kind of the green room, maybe 5, 6 of us at the most. No, maybe 10 of us. And I got into a conversation with Neil, and this was the first time I saw the band live. And I made a joke to him. I said, your album 2112 is my studio address. 2112. Funny coincidence. So, I mean, we would talk, and then in my mind, as I'm speaking to him, this is no ordinary superstar rock drummer. This is, if you didn't know he was a drummer, I would swear he was a history professor or a language professor at Harvard level. So I quickly said to myself, I said, why aren't you out there inspiring people, aside from the music, but speaking to people? And he was extremely shy person, very private. He never, publicly, he was very, very, very introvert, completely. And typically, he would only stay 5 minutes. He would come backstage after the concerts to say hello to their friends, the very close friends that they invited. And then he would leave and go see his family. He was very, very, like Charlie Watts, apparently was like that, from what I hear. And so, he stayed longer than he normally. He says, sorry, I'm staying a little longer just because this conversation is very interesting. So we exchanged numbers, and then we became friends. And in my mind, I said, you're the perfect person to take what you've done and use it as a model for these younger drummers and younger musicians to understand that you could be a really intelligent person, an academic even, and still do this, like just to show. I mean, I know that that's what I kind of did with repercussion, because we were all rockers, really. We were all drummers, rockers, but we went and we studied classical percussion. So we did the whole classical, contemporary. I have a double degree in jazz, all of that. But, when you do a classical performance, that's what you can do. And you can inspire people that it's all good. And it's important to understand it all. And then if you take something to a certain level and you have no borders, no barriers, then you inspire others to do the same and do things differently, because, when you can, you should, like what they did. I mean, they didn't compromise, they did it on their terms, which is a pretty big deal, I mean, in a smaller way, we did it with my group. We toured the whole world, and we really didn't care. And we even turned down a huge contract with Polygram Records once, when we were starting to make a big name. We were all over the world, and they said, you're the perfect ensemble for this kind of thing. And then when it came down to repertoire, the question was who chooses the repertoire and who has the ultimate artistic control, what goes on the record, and we couldn't agree on that. So,
I see.
Yeah. So then the guys, we had a meeting, and everybody said we didn't work this hard, and we love what we do, right? We don't have to be multimillionaires. We love what we do. We're enjoying this. Why give it up? And somebody like telling you what to do or what was going to go on the record. You don't have that artistic control. So we came back to the meeting and we said, if we cannot have the ultimate artistic control, we're not interested. And everybody in the room was shocked because there was big numbers attached to this. And I said to the guys, are you guys okay with that? He said, absolutely. And so I said to Neil, you did that, the same idea, of course, they did that in the beginning. They were not doing, they were not like super well known, but they insisted and they had great talents and they believed in it and they did it their way and it worked. And then, then you can respect yourself. And then that message is great to be able to project it to people coming up, that you don't always have to cave. You don't always have to, especially when you have something to say or when you really believe you have this thing that needs to get out. Whether it makes a lot of money or not, it's an artistic thing, and on a human level, you really should get it out and have that satisfaction.
Yeah, stay true to yourself. Yeah, trust to yourself.
Ultimately, I mean, what you do, I mean, you're consistent. And I like to use the word consistent. You're consistent with yourself. You're consistent with what you do, how you handle things, and you are Marcus Santos. When you think of Marcus Santos, he's consistent. Seriously, and then that you're not doing something else that's not really you, and it's not really what you want to do. When you have the talent and the work ethic and understanding that it's going to take a lot of work, then you should do it.
And enjoy the journey. I think maybe it's another thing. It's at the end of the day, it's not really the financial drive, the financial reasoning, right? That's not what drives us. It's really the fact that we love what we do. And then what does that say? This is super cheesy, but it's all good. What did they say? Like, if you like what you do, you don't have a day. You don't need a day off. Something like
yeah. I mean, who's counting, right? I mean, yeah. I cannot imagine doing something that I really don't enjoy doing just because it makes a lot of money. I think of course we have to make money. We have to take care of business. We have bills to pay. We have to food. That's of course given. But I mean, if you have this vision, and we can all do it. I strongly believe we can all do. We have something that is different from the next person that will take you there. You just have to take the time, believe in it, and you work at it. And that's your identity. That's who you are. And then you sleep well at night. Eventually, it might take a while, but as you say, it's the trip. It's the getting there. And also, my whole thing with this, one of the reasons I want to do this podcast is the connection. And, like when you meet somebody, or like I tell my students, part of your responsibility is not only to be good at what you do, but you also have to participate in somebody else's success. You have to help that person out, make that person successful. Whatever it takes, introduce that person to somebody, be helpful. So, I'm hoping, as we're speaking with this, is just dissipate information, share stories, and inspire other people to say, it's okay to be helpful. And in fact, I come from the village in southern Italy, as an immigrant, and everybody knew each other and everybody worked together. Everybody helped each other. And the same thing in music. You came from Brazil to America and you met somebody who helped you here and you helped somebody else there. And, we kind of built the Cosa thing about that whole concept too, about how can people help each other get to where they need to be. And you meet all the great people. Now you just got to do the work. and you have great models, And then if you need somebody's help, you don't necessarily have to ask your help. You say, listen, here's a good opportunity for so-and-so. Hey, Marcus, call so-and-so. You remember when we had Jim from Canadian Musician Magazine, when we did that event online in 2020, I immediately said, you mentioned something, I'm having a problem getting this thing out or something. And Jim said, well, give me his email address and I'll tell him and I'll send him the information on this. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. How we open doors for each other. Not just nepotism. I'm talking about here is somebody who could use this, or somebody who opened that door for you, like could be your teacher, It could be a close friend, and that's the way it works, right? And it should work.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's funny you say this, Aldito, because I agree with you 100%, but I come from a more selfish perspective. I believe in the laws of karma.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
okay.
if we open ourselves up in that way with that energy, as in if we can see the connect, oh, there is this opportunity to maybe recommend somebody to do something else or connect to people, it's it's good, and I feel like it creates a universe because it feels good to just be that catalyst, right? And maybe do something that will help somebody else, and hopefully the energy will bring it and come home, and you will receive it for yourself too.
Well, that's
you
the
know
whole idea. I think, if everybody is okay, then you're okay, ultimately.
yeah, and but Adito, if it's okay, touching back a little bit, that the tribute of and remembering the what the saying, the legendary life of New Beard. There was something that I wasn't aware that he was that shy. It's quite interesting because he was such a monster behind the drum set.
Yes.
But now thinking about it, the drum set was actually a tool
voice.
for him to like a voice for him to express, right? And I wonder if that's why, because he was so shy, that's why he covered himself with so many drums. Because it was never. I wonder, like, if you're in the audience, you'll never be able to see him. Like, you'd have to rely on the cameras, right? But
Right.
so it's quite interesting to hear that he was shy, and yet he was so fluent and eloquent in everything he did. Like, the last thing one would think that he was a shy person
Oh,
off the drum set.
yes. Oh, no, absolutely. It was his way of communicating. I mean, he also wrote the texts, right? I mean, he was an avid reader. And I remember once he sent me a photo of his library where he sits and reads. I thought mine was big. Oh, man. I think he was reading like 3-4 books a day. He was very, very, very knowledgeable, and he read a lot, especially when he
Yeah.
came up to his house in Morin Heights here. He had this house right on by the lake, and it's a huge library, amazing. And I said that's amazing that you have that kind of personality. But he was very, very introvert, very private. His close friends were very close, and
Nice.
and
And yet,
outside of that, he was not a show person. And when people recognized him, he would have a really hard time dealing with that, and so he always shied away. That's why he would even ride his motorcycle with somebody with him, obviously, just in case something happened. But he always rode his motorcycle to places. I mean, he was crazy, yeah, crazy in the sense that I don't know how he did it. From one city to the next, he would take his motorcycle, or that would amazing.
Yeah.
And he's written books about his trips, and
Nice.
very deep, very deep.
So it's interesting. So a deep, adventurous, yet shy and reserved. Quite. It's quite interesting. And I wanted to make a point of to take it to he was. Oh, I escaped. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but that's cool. I mean, the whole thing that he did, for Buddy Rich, was amazing because for many of us who followed Buddy Rich, and I certainly followed Buddy Rich a lot. In fact, I have his drum cases that he gave me, and
Wow.
and then when he did this thing for Buddy Rich really represented the level of musicianship and drumming, which was unbelievable. And he was also probably inside he was a very shy guy too, believe it or not. But he had this military way of running the show. But he was an entertainer from 2 years old,
It's
and
a
he was
different
a
persona per se. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
Behind
yes.
it.
And I mean, I met him a number of times because the guys would leave my name backstage, so I would see him from the side many times, and then I would see him for a couple of minutes, have conversations, and you could tell beyond what he projected that he was a very, very deep person and a very sensitive person. More than people think. Of course, he had a show to run, a band to run. He had, there's a lot of
Wow.
responsibility, but he was a very thoughtful person. Neil
Interesting.
was, Neil had a lot of respect for Buddy Rich, for like all of us did, and when he did that whole thing to honor Buddy Rich, I thought that was incredible of him, the most unlikely person, from the outside, to do that kind of thing, and he totally believed in it. He did it and made it happen, and he got everybody out there to do it, and because he wanted also to prove something about this music, this drumming, and this community. And it was his way of saying it. He's not going to stand up and talk about it. He's just going to do it, like his drumming. You know, but if you want to get to a conversation with him, he wasn't the type of person that would just go out and talk about many things, unless he was in a conversation like you and I are having, or sitting with a friend and you can go on forever. But he was a very, very deep person, and in my opinion, some people don't think there's a place for that, and I totally disagree, because as artists, as musicians, as people who do interesting things, making music, touring, creating, there's a whole thought process. So what is that thought process, and why are we doing that? It's not just for us to play this. It's also to communicate. It's also to create something outside of us and bigger than us.
Yeah.
And I think Neil had a very deep understanding and a thirst for that knowledge, which, I mean, we all kind of have on different levels. And it's really nice to hear it from somebody who proved it. He was doing it, but also he could explain it, what he was thinking or what he was experiencing, or what his thinking was, behind it, as a person who just did good. You know what I mean? You just do it, and you do it right.
Nice, nice. Yeah, yeah. When it's so another good thing about the COSA camps is that we get a chance to go beyond this, because I'm assuming it would take, let's say, if we were to sit down with Buddy Rich, it would take a moment to get to that level in which, like, okay, so we're now talking. Yeah, there's probably, because they are so reserved
Sure.
and shy in a way, as you were saying, right? So it takes a little bit to connect with somebody, right?
Sure.
And being able to have a more a deeper conversation, a more open
No, of course. I mean,
conversation.
if somebody were to ask you, I mean, why you do what you do, and I mean, you went to Boston, you went to Berkeley, you're now teaching at New England Conservatory. Like, this whole trajectory, there's a reason why you do it. You love what you do, obviously, and you're very good at it because you also spent a lot of time perfecting that, and you're also sharing it with people who want to learn those things. And we always have something to learn. So you have this voyage, and you meet these people along the way who help you make that happen, because that's in your mind, that's what you want, and that's why you came. That's what you came here for, is to do something like that. It may not always be exactly what you're thinking, but I think you'll always get a variation of it because you're focused. You might have, you're over here or you're over here, but you're in that direction, right? Unless
Yeah.
you decide
And
to change that.
Yeah, yeah. And the universe will. It seems like, right, that the universe will point us sometimes, and it's like, this is the way. So spend some time here and then see what can happen. So it's quite interesting. Sometimes we prepare so much. The reason why I came to the United States was to study Afro-Cuban music.
Oh,
Being from Brazil.
I did not know that. Okay, interesting.
So
Interesting.
yeah, being from Brazil, it's like oh samba and all. It's beautiful, great. I'm grateful for the backbone that I received by osmosis without even realizing. It's like oh, I was getting educated without realizing I was getting it, drumming educated, and then just when I left the country because I wanted to pursue something else, I realized how special this stuff from my home country is. But with that said, it's like if you have it and it's all over around you, it's sometimes you don't realize how special it is. But then the universe might show you, hey, I know you like this stuff, but what you've done your entire life growing up is cool too. So it's sometimes I think we're driving, but I'm not sure if we are really.
No, but the fact that you invested in yourself, the time and energy and the money that it took to get there, that's where it takes you. And by doing that, it really took you where you should be. There's a famous saying. Somebody said to me once, you are always where you should be. You know,
Cool.
if you think about that, because your mind is projecting, oh, I want to do this particular thing. Well, to do that, I need to go there or call this person that will teach me or give me some advice or whatever. But then you will take in who you are, and you will be where you should be. Now, you could change that by not doing that anymore, by doing it 10 times better or working more. But I think you end up being where you should be. And then you should be where you are. It's another,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, the
Yeah.
saying of like, be there. You know what I mean? Like, be there. This moment is important.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, it's quite interesting. And then sometimes we get caught up thinking of the future, and then we get to it's like thanks to you and the Cosa family, I had the chance to meet Dennis Chambers per se, and then you meet Dennis Chambers, and then it's like, well, that's awesome, great hang, great guy, and and then you're like, so how would Steve Gadd be? I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him, but it's like we always get caught up of the future, and it's it's interesting of like, yeah, we are we are where we should be, and
Yeah,
know
no,
the people we should know, and have the friends that we have.
sure. And then you take whatever you have where you are. I mean, it's like when Steve Gadd was at COSA. It's funny because we had this workshop. We only had 25 people. We capped it. It's only 25 people. And we had Antonio Sanchez. We had, here at the COSA studios. It was crazy. And so Steve Gadd was here. And people were just in amazement that they're standing beside this person who's just talking about what he does and what he's thinking when he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah. Like,
And you could spend a lifetime, with that. But, he's all of us are constantly evolving. So if you want to study somebody, you have to study their work and then sit down and say, well, what were you thinking? That obviously each one of us will never be a Steve Gadd, but you can certainly understand the concepts or the approach or that what's going on. It's like when I don't know if you must have been there when Jimmy Cobb was at COSA. And I asked him, he was really afraid. Like he was not afraid. He didn't have a lot of experience of being in that kind of environment because you're in classrooms and then you have rhythm section labs and then it's like school, right? So he's sitting in a class the first day. I'm sitting there and he wasn't sure. He says, Aldo, I'm not sure what to address. What would you say? I just said, well, in kind of blue, in this particular, I forget which tune, we talked about what were you thinking in in that ride because it's like just quarter notes in this section, and I then he launched, then he was on his way, because then people understood why he was who he was, and just that playing, all of a sudden you're hearing the Blue Note recording in your head because that's him. It's like his voice. To me, it was amazing. I'm listening to it, and I'm hearing, 5 minutes earlier was somebody else playing those drums, maybe John Riley or something, as good as John Riley is. But then you listen to this, and this is Jimmy Cobb, and you hear it. To me, that was amazing. It's like when you hear Gad, he sits there and he plays. You hear the voice. Beautiful.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah, and we listen to the recordings like, yeah, that's definitely Gad, and it would be what I would love to be in that room with you and Gad and hear this conversation, and because it would be amazing to pick his brain of how he got to where he is at, as in a library as in the library musician that he is. I don't know if I'm saying I'm being clear, but meaning like the guy is an encyclopedia in a drumming sense.
Right.
It's and then to bring to Brazilian context of talking about Steve Gadd. so Paul Simon recorded this song called "Rhythm of the Saints," and he hired a group from my hometown, Salvador City in Brazil, and they recorded a rhythm called samba reggae, right? Which was great. It's the first rhythm I ever played, and after I played the rhythm, I was like, oh, I want to play drums for the rest of my life. That was the one that did it for me. So Olodum recorded with Paul Simon, and Steve Gadd was on the drum set. And there is something about the way the Olodum plays. Actually, many groups from Salvador it play like that too. So they're playing a rhythm, and then the pulse is here, and then let's say it's gonna go into a drum break. So for some reason, sometimes the drum break then will take the pulse a little faster, and the rhythm comes back, and we slow down again. But it's subtle, but you can hear as as drummers, we can hear like, whoa, they rushed a little bit. Where is the downbeat again? Here's the rhythm again. So I kept on watching different drummers playing that music that Paul Simon recorded, and it was always right on the clock. And Steve Gadd was the first one that I heard that there is a particular drumming call that leads into the rhythm, and Olodum always rushes a little bit, and Steve Gadd did it. I was out of my mind. I was cursing I unfortunately didn't have a chance to see Paul Simon with the Steve Gadd, but I was cursing at the video. I was like, that is crazy. It's like, It is so subtle, and yet he did it as if he grew up in Brazil.
Yeah. No, and then anything Gadd does, he's like that, and it's amazing. And he's got a long musical history. I mean, he has perfect pitch. Also, he studied marching percussion. He was really deep in that. He's a tap dance tap dancer. In fact, he was even on the Disney show. He was one of those Disney kids, and he got a degree in at Eastman School of Music, studying with John Beck. And I remember one day, when Gadd was Gadd, and like in the height of when everybody discovered that he was on every single record we were listening to, I picked up a record by Chuck Mangione, because I used to buy everything, and I listened to it. And I'm listening to Chuck Mangione with symphony orchestra, and I read the linear notes, and Steve Gadd's playing timpani.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What? Yeah. So I mean, he's like the ultimate musician, and really listens to the music. And that's an important thing, because most of us sometimes get wrapped up in the technical aspects. And of course, technique is important, but it's the music. It's like I heard someone recently who had, and it was not an argument, but a serious discussion about what you're playing. It's the melody. There is nothing else as important as the melody. So learn the melody. And the guy repeated that, and I'm saying to myself, that is huge. That's a huge statement, and we forget sometimes. The melody is everything, and
It's the
everything
music, right?
evolves
Yeah.
around the melody, whether it's
Yeah.
jazz, whatever it is, whether it's opera, and the melody. You know, and in Cuban music, I always say to people, you know, when they ask about the clave, I said, well, it's all related to the melody. It's not just a clave and then they put a melody on it. The clave, what does it have to do with the melody? Or when they built the melody, it's construction, and you have to know that melody. Otherwise, it makes no
Yeah.
sense. You know,
But
it's
yeah,
deep.
and you know, I'll go ahead. And no, no, and then with relation, you know, to this makes so much sense to the melody, with relations to the melody, because sometimes we get caught up of like, okay, we need to stay here, and here is where it is, but sometimes the melody wants to stretch a little bit the beat,
Sure.
and it makes perfect sense, and to see that Gad has mastered also this this art is incredible, with the fact that he came from, if I'm not wrong, he came from a drumline background, right?
That's right.
So, and there you're looking for perfection. Everybody has to play the same way. Therefore, they probably want to quantize as much as possible. So I would wonder like how he broke into that
Well,
and started internalizing the feel and the groove of
Yeah.
world.
No, I have a
rhythms,
funny
you know?
feeling there was so much music around him that he was also playing jazz, that he was also playing all kinds of music, that music is music. So I think when you encompass that, then you become the musician, you know, working as hard as he did, you know. And ultimately, it you know, if I analyze and I look around, anybody who's had that kind of success, always it's about the music, not just the music, it's about the melody. And it's like Ringo Starr, another one, you know. I mean, every time
You
we
met
always,
him, right? How did-
sorry? You know,
You met him, right?
no, I was on stage with Greg Bizanet and sat in front of his drums, because that's, you know, Greg and I have that sharing, you know, like many of us of that era. The next morning after the Ed Sullivan show, we were all musicians suddenly, you know, and that he was a total inspiration forever. And he just, I mean, they changed the world, and he became, probably didn't understand it back then, but now the more I listen to it, the more I analyze it, the more I'm amazed every single day. You know, and I would have these conversations with Greg, and I would say, Greg, how does, you know, this particular fill? He says, oh no, that's the way he plays it is like this, and it's just brilliant. It's like composition and melody. So here's another one
Right.
who really gets it. He may not be able to explain it in technical terms as you and I might be able to, but it's all about the melody, all about the song. And, you know, you have to understand what that means. So some of us, sometimes we get wrapped up in the technical aspects. But a guy like Steve Gadd, a guy like Ringo Starr, there really is that melody, that song, that you go to that point, that deep, and that's what you play. You know, if you listen to whatever Steve plays, and sometimes I've asked him sometimes, you know, I'd go to a concert. I remember the last time I saw him play live with, who was it? The singer, they were in town. James Taylor. Yes.
Oh.
And I noticed, I said at intermission, I went backstage and I said, Steve, I'm watching you, but I don't see you move, number one. And like, there are a lot of things you're not playing, but I think I'm hearing them. And you know what I mean? Like you're playing, like, looks
You're
like you're
feeling-
playing nothing, but you're playing. He says, well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm actually on a mission to take away notes and play only what's essential. And I said, wow, that's incredible to be able to do that and not have your chops take over you, because certainly Steve has chops and musicality and all of that. But the fact that you're only playing what's absolutely necessary and you're able to bring it to that level for that gig. You know, I mean, with Chick Corea, it might be different. Same thing with Ringo Starr. I mean, he doesn't think, oh, how can I throw this lick in there? It would make absolutely no sense, and there's no point.
Yeah.
So whatever he's playing, you know, that's what it needs. You know, from the fills to the groove to the sound or just what you play. It's not to show that you can do something. It's what does this melody tell me? Huge.
Nice.
It's a huge thing.
Huge. Audito, I have to thank you so much, but I have to teach in 15 minutes.
Well, no, thank you. No, this is actually a lot longer than I thought, but we can go forever, and maybe we will someday. But it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, and thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, we can share stories and thoughts on things, but I'm glad you came on board, and to be continued.
Yes, I appreciate you. Thank you so much from my heart. You have been we've been talking about mentors and legends, and you know, I've told you a few times, and let me make this official in this recording too. You are a mentor, you are an inspiration, you are a legend, and you reinvented the drumming culture and the drumming family in a way, right? You brought drum camps to another level that is now the normal. You know, you were the trailblazer of it all, and so I'm so glad to be part of the Koza family and be your friend. I appreciate you from my heart to your heart, my friend. Thank you.
And thank you, Marcus. To be continued. Keep up the great work. Thanks again.